All right, everybody. Mr. Anderson here, True Crypto 28 on Twitter. So you suffered through the first video of True Vibration. It was a little clunky. It was definitely long-winded. It had to be that way because I did have to try to at least touch on everything. I know I didn't even get to touch on everything, and some I barely scratched the surface, but it was necessary to fill one in to show the different settings and things of that nature. Obviously, you can kind of go through that yourself, but I wanted to pinpoint some of it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to embark on a series of much shorter confined videos so that no one suffers. You can watch for a few minutes and take some in, take some notes, and start to get a hold of it. If you're going to use this tool, there's a lot going on. I know it's frustrating on the eyes for some people. Again, you can break it up into a couple indicators if you want. You can turn a lot of different things off if you like as well. But you will want to put in the time and effort into working with it so that you can learn the intricacies, because there are a lot of significant intricacies that you can get into that are going to create a lot of edge. I didn't touch base on any of them for the most part. I barely mentioned them, and I'll do that as we get into a series of videos. And then, of course, I assure you, you'll find many of your own, right? So that's where we're at from now. Of course, I did get good feedback from a lot of people, which is good. But so far, so good. Let's just kind of roll into this, okay? I'm going to just start here with the first thing, which is the trending aspect. We didn't touch much about, we didn't touch on this too much. That's just the fill right here. When you see green fill, that's a trending aspect, momentum trend on that time frame, right? Red and green are the ones that mostly matter. Blue is possibly leading into a trend. Orange possibly leading into a bear trend, but not so. It's just like an early indicator. And what I'll show you here is that if you go to something like a weekly scale, right? You'd start off with a weekly anchor, right? Meaning a higher time frame that you're going to take. What that means, for anyone that doesn't know, what an anchor would be is that is the main chart that you're looking at, meaning that it has to meet the criteria of this chart first before you then look at either what you call a trigger chart or something along those lines, which would be the lower time frame. And I'm looking for some confluence. So ultimately with this, what I'm going to show you here is that it's not going to happen that much, what I'm talking about, which is this. Taking a high time frame like a weekly and then finding a situation to where after the weekly either goes green or red, waiting until the daily, so they're both on the higher time frame side, but till the daily also then matches that color, okay? So green, if we go green weekly to green daily, or if we go something along the lines of red weekly and then eventually wait for a red daily. So all we're going to do is we're going to go backwards in time, and I'm going to show you all of them, okay? Every time it occurred. Now, the problem is with a lot of crypto, you don't have that much history, and because this actually encompasses a lot of time, you're not going to have a lot that even qualify for that in crypto. That's okay. Still works on Bitcoin, probably Ethereum as well, maybe some others, but the idea is you can also utilize this on some other time frame. We'll talk about that, okay? Just for now, though, I just want to show this, and again, I do want to keep the video short. So let me go ahead and smack myself for even explaining that a little bit too long. All right, so I'm going to show you every one, right? What happens first? First, we wait till we go green on the weekly. So let's just spread this out. So we're green weekly here, right? Right there, even here, right? And then we eventually go green on the daily, and you get a nice move on, okay? That is the trending indicator, okay? They don't always work, but I'm going to show you that with Bitcoin, you're going to notice and say, well, wow, they actually work a tremendous amount of time, right? Okay, so here we go. Same thing, green on the weekly, and I'll show you the state here. You know, whether it's this one or the next one. Let me see. Sometimes what happens is you end up, I'm not there in real time. In real time, you could tell if it was already green. I mean, this doesn't repaint, so it shouldn't change the color. But even if you go to the end of the week, it's before the big up move. But ultimately, it looks like they matched all the way back here. So you can see what happens. Very strong move there. Let's continue to go back in time until we find the next one. You see a lot of time pass before we see anything, right? That's okay. I just want to show you these actual specific ones. And that is here. So we're red on the weekly. We end up matching that with a red on the daily right there. And then we drop down. Maybe it was the one before. It doesn't matter. Guess what? Strong move to the downside. That's confluence, right? Now, keep in mind, the more confluence you can find, the better. I'm not even speaking about things like moving averages or anything along those lines. I mean, if you got some solid TA or a little bit of TA, that's a pretty ugly look there, right? So now you also would have a look of saying, well, look, these moving averages are a little bit of a disaster. It looked like I was coming in. Looks like a massive fake on a higher time frame here. This would be a head fake of sorts, to where you get a failure pattern, and then you end up losing your moving averages, rejection of the moving average, along with confluence of the trending indicators lining up for my anchor chart on the weekly and my daily chart, both showing red. And then there's also terrible slope going on here in these, but if you don't want to get too advanced with those, don't worry. And then eventually these bursting indicators, right, which say the likelihood of a stronger move is even a little bit, it's more likely to advance another leg. That's what those typically means. That if the bulls, when you see the bear side, if the bulls don't create better market structure, meaning leap back into the structure, if you don't understand that language, don't worry about it right now. But if the bulls can't reclaim the market structure to some degree, then we're likely to take a sharper leg down anytime you see those, okay? But regardless, for this instance, I'm really just focusing on the confluence of the daily and the weekly, with the weekly being primary first. And you can see what's happened thus far in doing that. Right here's another one. So right here we have, I did show, you know why I put this one? I put this one because we did have an orange, right? So we start to get negative structure. If you don't count this one, that's fine. There was a reason why I put this one in the begin with. I don't really remember exactly what it was, but it probably was the fact that, one, you're orange, but look, the structure's terrible. If you happen to learn how these different momentum indicators work, I mean, this is actually a pure bear look right here. That we're looking at. So there must have been something going on with the lagging lines that's preventing this from even being red, but it doesn't matter. This was orange, and then you end up going orange red. If you don't want to count that one, you don't have to. I'm not trying to ever take credit for something specific, but that's a weird look there on that one. Okay, so maybe disregard that, but it's on the weekly to daily. Now, if you take that on, and I might have just marked that off on daily to H4 or weekly to H4, I don't know. Regardless, I'll skip that for now. Again, there's enough examples here that we don't have to try to cheat. Okay, so here's another right there. So this, why did I show this? I'll show you. So really it starts here. I know we're going right to left, but this is another one where now we're green, right? So you want green, and then when the daily turned green, you see how they line up? That's right. It's actually on that one before, a couple before, let's call it right there. But it's before the big burst up when Bitcoin took off. Okay, great. However you play that, remember there's 100 other ways to play these things, but just utilizing this one feature, it doesn't happen again until here, which gives you another move up. And then I showed this one here because what you'll see is that the structure never goes bearish, right? So if I go from a very high time frame weekly green and I end up more neutral, you notice that it's not a bearish structure. I didn't lose structure in my formation here on the weekly scale or anything along those lines. Ultimately, although I didn't go green till here, and that's going to take some time on the high time frame, what happened is I started to show blue, and then even if I wait till I go green, which is here, I find that, okay, I didn't quite turn green until this move started to commence itself, but I did come off bullish structure, and if you look at it, things look very well, and now again, I've gone green daily. So again, if you didn't count that last leg up, I don't mind. Again, I'm never trying to take credit for something extra, but I am showing you that, look, you can utilize some basic TA and have an understanding that, hey, we've been green. It's going to go a little bit neutral, especially as you start to understand these levels and how these signals are produced. You'll start to understand there's no qualifying shorts of any manner near here, so it doesn't mean any of that. And then suddenly I'm green again. Yeah, of course, I'm interested in that. That's a good trend. Okay, let's go back into bear territory. All right, so let's just go ahead and start from the top here, and then we'll review the bullish ones. So we turned red on the weekly right about here. We were already in the midst of this, so I didn't put a line here because I wasn't trying to cheat and say, hey, let's just grab this last leg down. But technically it is true, right? You did go red right there, even if this was already red. So if you waited to get this top, I mean, you shorted this exhaustion, obviously it still gives you a couple legs down, but I didn't mark that one. I wanted to mark from here because this is actually a bad signal, so I do want to show you a bad one. So that's the first bad one we've seen, by the way, right, on this scale, going weekly to daily. And it wasn't even terrible. You ended up getting a good short right then after. And then once it turned red again, these are big moves. This is 99.99 down to 58.55, right? So don't be confused by what I'm showing you here in a tight format. This is a massive move, a massive leg down. And then as we go back down, as things chop around on the high time frame chop, and then unfortunately we go back red. So we're red daily and red weekly. So what happens? Another leg down. It happens again here. Guess what? Another leg down. It ends up happening again there, right? Now you'll see that we jumped ship here, but eventually we go back red on the weekly, and then a couple days later, red on the daily. Now, by the way, there might be some times here where you think, hey, the move was too big. I don't like what happened. I don't mind that. Then don't take it. But I am just showing you that from a standpoint of just looking at the numbers, the hit rate's pretty damn high. And not only that, you've seen some big ones, some big fallouts from there too. So here we go. Whether you decide to take it or not, that's certainly your perspective of how you're looking at things or how much it fell. I actually completely understand that, because I'll tell you the truth. There's no way I'm taking that trade after I had 3 gigantic days down. Now, I might be thinking, if this thing doesn't reclaim structure, I probably wanted to reclaim about right there. If it doesn't, I'm shorting the next local high anyway. So this would have been a short. You would have been a qualifier anyway. But the whole idea is that gives you the next leg down. But just using this feature, red and red, the next one would have been right there. Again, it's successful, so on and so forth. And then you got a big move up. Great, that's fine. But nothing here was red, right? We go red again there. You might say, oh, I missed all this. No, there's other ways to do it, lower time frames, etc. Maybe we'll jump into that. But on this time frame, weekly to daily, it happened here and still gave you 7,000 down to, possibility 5860, which is great. Then again over here, this is the second one that would have been a loss. So there's 2 of them. And then the third one. So you started having some choppy action, right? So there was some 2 or 3 that were bad. And then right there, we end up getting it again. And that one more than makes up for the fact that you had 2 bad ones or 3 bad ones total, right? Because it's paying you off in spades. So you also notice that you don't see a lot of just takeoffs where you get a signal and it just blows up the other way. That doesn't happen too often, but can it happen? Of course, anything can happen in trading, so I don't want to ever paint the picture. That's why you have to use your risk management at all times. I'm never trying to paint a picture of easy money or free money or anything along those lines. No. This is a helpful tool more than anything else, and it's going to help give you perspective. And the idea that we're talking about here is finding trend, right? So if we can find trend, that's great. All right, so let's just go back earlier in time. Right there, this is the weekly. So finally turned green on the weekly, and that matches here on the daily. Let me just zoom in just for perspective, because I do want to keep this short, as I mentioned. So that doesn't happen until there, and guess what? You get a nice move up. If you held on, you probably did not get stopped if you're holding there. Another leg up from there, which is good. Whether I don't care how much you did. Again, I'm never going to claim that I wanted all of it. This is the first one that I've seen that's just fairly terrible right there. And ultimately, it can happen, right? That's trading. So that's the first terrible one. I'll keep a note of that here. And then, again, remember, this is the scaling issue, so you're not going to find all that many when you're going weekly to daily. But ultimately, right there, we get another, and now we start getting to some big winners here, where this one just chopped around, gave you a second signal again, and then just absolutely blew up and took off, which made up for any terrible thing you saw in the past, right? So what do we see? We look back at multiple years. We had about 4 signals that were failures only, which isn't that many. 1 that was terrible, okay? So that's a good feature. But here's something else you can do that I would not normally do. Normally, I want to keep my time frame to where I cut it by 2, cut it by 4 when I'm using an anchor down to a trigger. But in this case, I'm going to show you something unique, okay? When you have a very high time frame, such as the weekly, in the red, I don't necessarily mind going to like a 4-hour. Now, as always, study your chart, see how it's worked, right? You should always say, let me look at the asset, go back in the past. And has this system worked in the past? Well, we're going to look at it right here, right? So we happen to know that this area is red. Of course, you didn't know that then, but we're going to take every signal and just see how it played out, right? Because all we're doing is I'm going to do it on the small ones too, meaning the short areas. So right now, this is a red one right there. You say, well, wait a second, this thing already dropped $8,000. There's no way you're looking for shorts at this point. Well, you're wrong. I am looking for shorts. And that first one occurs right there, right? So that's 12,000 and change. Ends up dropping all the way down to about 9,200, about a $3,000 drop. That's taking an H4 to a weekly. And that's only for this trending indicator, okay? And I'm saying, hey, my weekly trend is down. Therefore, I'm going to take this H4, okay? Then I get another one right there. This one chops around a little bit. I won't even count it. I mean, let's count it as a small loss. How about that? Instead of saying I won't count it as a gain, because there are times that you could have made a little money in there. I'll call this one a small loss. I'm fine with that. It doesn't happen again until there. Guess what? Massive victory. I mean, that is a huge runner and a huge winner for you, no matter how you slice it, whether you got stopped out here or not. and then re-entered here, that's completely up to you. Notice this is all in the confines of this move, right? And that's the point. That's why you want to try to trade with the trend as much as you can. I'm not saying you can't do some awesome counters. I'm not saying you can't learn the counter. Those are all fine and dandy. I'm just showing you that this trend trade is going to help you out significantly a lot, right? So there you go right there. Then right there, another one. Guess what? Huge leg down. So in the midst of a big trend, this is going to be beneficial. 8,100 down to 5,800. Of course, you never know you're in the trend until you're in the trend. And guess what? Look, all this time, this H4 is now showing you something different, showing you something different, showing you something different. Nothing's red, nothing's red, nothing's red. Guess what? It's red here. Now we're all the way back up to 10,400. Well, here we are, still red. That weekly just couldn't get back. You see these momentum indicators? Everything it's showing you, it couldn't climb over. God bless FSR, right? You see this purple one? Look where it's at. That's a rejection right there on the weekly scale. That's a good thing. This is a non-qualifying trade right there, as you can see. But this trend indicator is telling you what? Confluence. That's what it's telling you. It says 10,900. Excuse me, 10,590. You ended up making it down to 9,300. Whether you got chopped in the middle here somewhere, that's up to you. But ultimately, there's multiple signals. There's one. Another one that's a little bit of a winner. Even if they're not massive. This one is a loser. But you end up chopping around for about 4 or 5 periods, and you probably would have gave up and tossed it. So we'll count that one as a loser, which is fine. Guess what? The gift keeps on giving. This thing makes its way up all the way back to 11,000 and change. Guess what happens? We're going to short this thing at 10.9, and we're going to ride it all the way down. Maybe you only wrote it down to here. It went down as low as 9,300. Maybe you decided to roll with it because it looked looked like garbage here in these moving averages, and you wrote it down to 8,300 right there, right? Or you took this next signal, which was there at 9,300, and picked up another 1,000. Okay, let's continue on. Happens here. Definitely want to pick this one because it's a bad signal. You had a little day. Maybe you were wise and saw that little doji and jumped out. But if not, you got stopped there. That's trading. It will happen. Right there. Get in right there. Another little drop. Nothing crazy. Probably got stopped on the way out. That's okay. So I'll call that one as a break even. Guess what happens? It takes a nice rally up. We're still in the red though on this weekly. This weekly cannot escape. So what do we get? 8,400. Huge drop. I mean, you were literally never at risk in this situation. It never even reclaimed the 20 or the 21 on the 4 hour, right? Regardless, though, if you did get out at some point, you could have another entry right there, another leg down. Thank you for the money. We're happy. Right there, another one. Nothing. I love this because nothing really happened. Sometimes these happen. You're just hanging around, and ultimately you would have got stopped at that. Maybe a small loss, no big deal. Okay, continue on. Oh, what do I see here? We broke out finally. So finally we go at least into neutral. So this is actually good. I want to show something here. We just talked about this. Now, I'll let you guys get as creative as you want with this, but here you are now in weekly neutral. So it hasn't been able to climb out exactly. Correct? So what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for confluence in this situation. Is this a qualifier? Well, I'm not going to jump into the qualifiers right now, but you get the point. So let's just kind of look at some green. Now I'm going to just flop forward. Well, there's so much red here. All right, let's do this. Okay. So back into red, 4 hour, another drop down. I'm going to race through these now. 4 hour right there. Maybe that one was a stop. Maybe it wasn't. 4 hour red right there. That's a big move, right? You see this within the confines of the weekly move. I'm right here on the weekly in case you're wondering. I'm not making things up. So you could see how if you are getting this signal, red or green, right? I'm not doing it for the blues. I'm not doing it for the orange. I'm not doing it for the neutrals, which is black. I'm doing it for red and green. In those situations, especially if you look back at your asset and see that, hey, this is done pretty well. Now, what happens when the other is true? Weekly to 4 hour on the green side. Okay, let's just check it out and find out. Well, here we go. We're green here, as we mentioned. H4 gives me green. I just happened to get myself a gigantic candle, $1,000 candle. Thank you very much. Happy to take it. 4 hour comes back right there. This one's going to be a loss, right? It was a little stop out head fake. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not messing with you here when I tell you this, that eventually you'll be able to learn that there's some other stuff going on here that's not so hot, right? This is not a great look here, but that's okay. I'm going to count this as an absolute loss by this basic format that we're going into. And then you follow that up with what? Another nice win. This one here, it looks like a win, but at the same time, yeah, you would have stopped. Your stop would have had to be pretty far. So either you didn't play this one, or if you did play it with a smaller position and a farther stop, it would have been a nice win. Again, I'm never trying to act like some are winners when they shouldn't be. This one gives you a nice leg up, but this was an ugly dump out that could have caught you. I like to let things run, so that might have caught me personally. I don't have any problems admitting that. Okay. Right there, another entry. I mean, it's the gift keeps on giving again. So you're not always going to get trends, right? So that's the problem. A lot of times you get choppy action, high time frame chop, and it won't work like this. But when you are in a trend, that's the beautiful thing about this aspect. When you're in a trend, it's going to work very well for you. Okay. Man, just now I looked at my recorder and I seen like 000, but that was a live button. I thought the whole time I'm sitting here not recording, which is hilarious. But anyway, not the case. It worked out. So again, we're still green on the weekly. I'm right here still on the weekly. Another one. Thank you. Now this one, bad one, right? You go green right there. You jumped in immediately. You get stopped out. Sucks. It happens. And look, trends change. That's going to happen. So when this happens here, you're probably going to get caught somewhere. So that's okay. The idea is that if you're riding it over and over again and you caught a trend, you're not going to mind getting stopped a few times. It's okay. It's part of trading. Again, here we are, right there, flat, flat, flat. Now, would this one have stopped you out? Maybe it did. Maybe it did. If it didn't, it gave you a nice leg up. Now this leg is just too big, I'm not going to count that as a success because I'm not jumping right in on a green bar. If I gigantically leap into it, I wanted to pull back. I probably would have brought this to a lower time frame just to see if I could have got a decent pullback to enter. It didn't really happen. And now I do have to realize that I am in the black now. I got to go back to green, which is here. I'm hoping actually to find some garbage where I get stopped out or messed up. But I'm not going to find that just yet. Actually, I'm right now still in the thick of things, which is right there. I'm green again. Let's just wait. Let's call it here. Let's claim that this is the spot, right? So we don't cherry pick. So even if you missed all that going weekly to 4 hour, right? Because it's not easy to go weekly to 4 hour. You end up getting here. The final leg of this one took you from 11,300 up to 14,000. Of course, I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that you would have caught all of that, but a nice healthy portion of it, you would have been pretty happy, as you can imagine. Okay, so you get the point. I don't have to continue to beat a dead horse on that one. That's the trending aspect that you can utilize and work in. Of course, you can add elements of confluence, right? Utilizing your TA for moving averages, utilizing your other additional TA, understanding the market structure, etc. Since I have you, I'll take maybe 2 to 5 minutes here and just talk about one other aspect here, which is smooth vibration, just to kind of drive home a point. So let's just say we're looking at good old smooth vibration. I'll put this guy on the daily. The smooth vibration is the yellow line, right? So what we care about most is the 70 and the 30 when it relates to the yellow line, right? And what we say is, I'm only going over this because a few people don't understand, and it's a simple process, which is when the yellow line crosses 70, I want to compare it to the last time the yellow line crossed 70, right? Now, ideally, I want this yellow line to come to the 50 mark, even a reset to the 30 before making it back. But ultimately, to keep it simple, I want to go ahead and have what? Comparison from this one to this one. And what do we end up seeing? Here's a good example. Yellow line crossing 70. I want to go back in time, just like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and look up. So I was here. I went back in time. I know that this is going to be the level that we have to make it to the top, right? The wick. If I can't make it there and I put in a higher low, excuse me, a lower high, or what? A local high. You can check the last video for that if you need to. Well, then that is a qualifying short, which you would have been in right then and there, and you would have caught that entire sharp leg down. This is coming off of the top, guys. You understand that, right? So I'm not cherry picking or anything along those lines. And you might then see this one right here and say, well, wait a second. This one is a dog crap signal. Well, there is a bull signal here that is a non-qualifier. Why? Because I'm comparing this under 30 to this under 30, right? The yellow line. When I pass 30, I want to compare it to the last time I passed 30, which is right there. Right? We can zoom in if you need to. I'm trying to simplify this as much as possible. So as soon as a local low, now by the way, this is a very tight formation, but as soon as that local low was confirmed, whatever that is, it claims it was here, at least the algo does, ultimately, it's not a qualifier, even though it's a winner, right? I can try to take credit for it. But here's the reason I want to bring this up real quick. Let us not forget something. I'm highlighting this box so that on the 4 hour, I can show you something. zoom in. If you like it for some reason, or you're curious, or you're looking for a long, but you see it's not a qualifier on that higher time frame, you can zoom in if you'd like and try to find yourself a qualifier. This first one absolutely was not. Why? Because this portion under 30 needs to be higher than the last time it was under 30. That's here. Clearly, this is higher than this. You need this to be higher than that. Why? You would need a higher low in order to jump into that trade. So that is a no. That one's a non-qualifier. We wait until the next qualifier, which happens right there. And guess what? Although I did not get this entry on the daily scale, I absolutely got it on the 4 hour. You see what I'm saying, guys? So you can lower your perspective, especially if you utilize some other elements of Confluence or something else that you saw you like, or maybe you saw something here in your momentum indicators like, hey, on the 4 hour, I do have a nice flow going here where I have my mid vibration above my full vibration, they recross, etc. Well, you end up with a very nice entry here at 10.3, and it pushes its way off to about 11.3. You know, it's slow, methodical, etc. But it is what it is. It worked out well. That's good. And then you can zoom in always if you want to do that. Now, when you start going too low, you got to be careful. You're opening yourself up to more divergence, right? So keep an eye out for the divergences. You're opening yourself up to more chop, etc. But this is just an entry into that position, just so that you have an understanding that it doesn't mean that it was a non-factor, that you didn't play it at all. It just means that on that time frame, it wasn't a qualifier. But it does give you, and I'm just going to go ahead and zoom out now really quickly and look at the daily scale so that we don't misinterpret this, right? I'm going to actually get rid of just about everything except this. Bitcoin comes, it pummels, it dumps out, right? Coronavirus, etc. And you end up in a situation where we say, hey, is this a qualifier? Well, it's this one below 30. I got to go to the last one below 30, which is right here. Perfect. Is it higher? It is. Guess what? Gives you a nice trade. Now, the beauty of this trade is you might have held it all the way. You never broke structure, but it gives you another entry right here. Why is it a new entry? Because I need to compare this one to the last time I broke 30, which is right there. I might as well box it for you. This one to here. Is it above that level? Of course, it's above that level. I should be more specific with this. It just has to be above the lowest low of that little formation. Now, sometimes that formation might be 4, 5, 6, 8 candles. I would take the low of that formation if that was the case, right? Meaning however long the level was below 30 here, okay? So ultimately, gives me another another long. I take that long. Well, guess what? There ends up being another one here. Is this level compared to the last one, which is there, is this higher? It is higher. So you get another entry. This one smooth. You certainly wouldn't have a stop below, above that point. In fact, you probably have a 1 ATR below this right here, or a half ATR, etc., depending how volatile things have been. So you would have hung out in here and eventually really just been in a long position. Now, maybe you didn't like the hangout. Maybe you had a leverage position. You didn't like that you were getting taxed or anything along those lines. But I do want to show this because this is something to where you end up getting another signal. That by itself gave you several days of a decent move before trying to clear the basis here. When you see these type of scenarios, they're just trying to get rid of the higher leverage players. That happens. And guess what happens? When you zoom in, another one right here. And again, it gets it. So you end up getting another one. And I'm sure that if I go ahead and into this formation, I have not double checked it. Well, I can go ahead and just switch my screens here. Oops, sorry. I want to go here. I know that I'll find another one because you can zoom in if that's the case. If you have this good market structure, you're going to end up finding even a later entry, meaning an entry where you don't have to be so patient waiting for 20-something days. And that came here. See, this was not a qualifier right there because it's lower than that point, obviously, right? See, you did break lower, so that doesn't qualify, but you wait a few days. That's your entry. Nice little run up, little backfill, big move. Now you're just living the dream. Why? Because life is good. You're in a good position. You're not losing structure at all. March, 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 March. And you literally participate in the whole thing. And guess what? It says, go ahead and re-enter. And you do. And you're happy with that. You're probably not even so upset when you get dumped on because it just had such a massive gain. It's even nice enough to give you a nice little runner right there, essentially. Now, this is an interesting one in that maybe on this time frame, you say, hey, you know what? Technically, I did go lower. Look, that's the way you view it. Again, I'm never trying to act like the thing performs better than it doesn't. It's not about that. It's about being a tool that you can help with your trading. I'm out for now. These videos are going to be shorter like this. I'm going to pop out many of them for you, hopefully one each day. Not counting the weekends, or else I'll get divorced. This is Mr. Anderson, True Crypto 28, signing out.